Martina Hingis was once considered one of the brightest stars in tennis, a prodigy who took the world by storm with her incredible skill, speed, and strategic mind. She was the tennis sensation of the late 90s and early 2000s, winning Grand Slam titles and rewriting the tennis history books before the world even knew what hit it. But just as the tennis world had crowned her as the future, the inevitable happened. Like many elite athletes, Hingis faced the cruelest of enemies: injuries. Today, we're diving deep into the painful journey of how these injuries ultimately shattered what could have been an even more legendary career. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the stories of triumph, pain, and resilience that come with the world of sports. Grab some popcorn, sit back, and let's talk about one of the greatest what could have been stories in tennis history: the meteoric rise of a tennis legend. Before we talk about injuries, let's take a moment to remember why Martina Hingis became a household name. Born in 1980 in Switzerland, she was a tennis prodigy, a child who practically woke up with a racket in her hand. At the age of 12, she was already being compared to legends like Steffi Graf and Monica Seles. And by 16, she became the youngest player ever to be ranked world number one, a 16-year-old number one. Imagine that. We're talking about a teenager who outplayed seasoned veterans, dominating the sport with remarkable precision and artistry. Hingis wasn't just a tennis player, she was an idea, a revolutionary approach to the game. Some called her the Swiss Miss, others the Mozart of tennis, thanks to her uncanny ability to orchestrate every point like a masterpiece. But Hingis wasn't just about showy highlights. She brought tactical genius to the court, a razor-sharp mind that could break down any opponent, regardless of their power or experience. Her success was built on incredible court vision, anticipation, and quick decision-making, which made her seem untouchable at times. And her speed, insane. She wasn't the tallest or the hardest hitter. But boy, was she fast and accurate. But as incredible as her rise was, the cracks in the foundation had already started to show. No, not in her game, but in her body. And before we knew it, those injuries would start making themselves known. In 1997, she won the Australian Open, and with that, she solidified her place in history.
There it is. Hingis marches into history. The youngest.
But what many didn't know was that the cracks were already starting to form. No, not in her technique, but in her body. We'll get into that in just a bit, so stay tuned. The first signs of trouble: early injuries. Like all great athletes, Hingis had to push her body to the limit. But it's here, early in her career, that the injuries first started to creep in. It wasn't just about being pushed to exhaustion. Hingis faced something more insidious: repetitive stress injuries. These injuries didn't happen overnight, and they didn't have the dramatic, headline-making intensity like some of the other legendary tennis injuries we've seen. Instead, they were more like a slow, painful whisper, tiny, persistent problems that kept getting worse. One of the first big warning signs came in 1999 at the US Open. Martina was limping off the court after a tense match, clutching her ankle in clear distress. Her feet and ankles were taking the brunt of the stress from her lightning-fast movement on the court. But instead of stopping, Hingis pushed through it. After all, what's a few aches and pains when you're constantly winning titles? But this was no minor injury. The constant pounding from hours of practice, tournaments, and training was taking its toll. The pain wasn't just physical, it started messing with her confidence too. And in tennis, confidence is as important as skill. This led Hingis to a choice many athletes make: I'll play through the pain. What we didn't know at the time was how much this decision would cost her in the long run. The knee issues that almost ended it all. As if chronic foot problems weren't enough, enter the infamous knee injuries. By the year 2001, Hingis was feeling more and more discomfort in her right knee. And let me tell you, this wasn't your run-of-the-mill ache. This was the kind of pain that can destroy an athlete's career. Knee problems are notoriously hard to deal with in tennis, where quick pivots, constant lateral movement, and explosive sprints are the foundation of the game. In 2001, Hingis was forced to undergo knee surgery after her knee had deteriorated beyond repair. This wasn't a quick fix. We're talking about serious surgery that required months of rehabilitation, and this is where it gets tricky. With the amount of pressure and strain a player puts on their knees throughout their career, surgery can only do so much. After the surgery, Hingis came back to the courts, but her mobility was compromised. Her once lightning-fast footwork was suddenly less explosive. The fear of re-injury always lingered. Despite that, she still fought her way through the 2002 season, but her results started to slip. She wasn't the same player. Her confidence on the court started to take a hit. She wasn't the feared number one she used to be. She was becoming vulnerable, and worse, the injuries kept coming. By 2003, Hingis had reached a breaking point. She would end up stepping away from the game, not because she wanted to, but because her body had betrayed her, and no athlete wants to admit defeat. But at that point, Hingis didn't have a choice. A forced retirement, a glimmer of hope, and a return to glory. In 2003, just a few short years after being ranked number one, Martina Hingis was forced to retire early, at the tender age of 22, a career cut short by the very thing that had once propelled her to the top. It was heart-wrenching to watch a legend bow out before reaching her true potential, and the tennis world mourned what could have been. Hingis was a champion, yes, but she was also a tennis artist, and we had just begun to see the brilliance of her artistry. How injuries destroyed a career, the fallout, and the legacy. So how did these injuries destroy Martina Hingis' career? It's not just the immediate effects. The biggest issue was the cumulative damage. The knees, the feet, and the wear and tear on her body ultimately stopped her from playing the way she was meant to. The body is an athlete's most valuable asset, and when it starts breaking down, it's like watching a sports car slow to a crawl. The engine might still be powerful, but the wheels don't turn as smoothly anymore. In her prime, Hingis wasn't just playing tennis. She was writing history, dominating the game with one of the most strategic minds in sports. But her body, alas, had different plans. The injuries changed the trajectory of her career. And even though she made attempts at comebacks, she could never quite reclaim the dominance she once had. This was a woman who should have won so much more. Martina Hingis' story is a reminder that no matter how much talent you have, the body has its limits. Injuries can rob us of greatness, but they can never erase the legacy of what was achieved. Hingis may not have played as long as we all hope, but her brilliance on the court, especially those early years, will forever be remembered. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into the careers, struggles, and triumphs of athletes who changed the game forever. Catch you in the next one.